And we are on. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the second Connect series of the 2018-2019 academic year. My name is Brandon Clark. I'm a doctoral student in the Educational Leadership Organization and Policy Program in the School of Education at Iowa State University. And I serve on the Division A Graduate Student Committee as a co-chair and one of the hosts of the Connect series.
And my name is Kenesha Harrington. I'm a second-year doctoral student at Clemson University studying educational leadership in the Department of Educational and Organizational Leadership. And I serve as a co-chair and host of the Division A Connect series. The Connect series is an initiative sponsored by the AERA Division A Graduate Student Committee, which features a sequence of virtual real-time sessions broadcast monthly throughout the academic year. Each session features different scholar practitioner panelists and focuses on a unique theme related to educational leadership, organizations, and policy.
The theme for the series is preparing educational leaders and researchers for community engagement. Much of our discussions today is going to try to address the concept of what does community engagement entail from the standpoint of educational leadership scholars and practitioners. What capacities are necessary for active community engagement? Thirdly, what are some of the institutional, societal, and cultural challenges historically and currently that might impede educational leadership scholars and practitioners from engaging communities? And also, what advice our panelists might have for educational leadership researchers who want to integrate community engagement into their scholarly agenda.
So today we are extremely fortunate to be joined by Dr. Terri Watson, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Leadership and Special Education at the City College of New York. Dr. Watson, if you could tell us a little about yourself, your scholarly interests, some of your past and current work, and just kind of start us off.
Okay, well, first off, thank you for having me. Again, I'm Terri Watson. I am in my 7th year at the City College of New York. And the nice part about the City College of New York is that we're actually in Harlem, centrally located, and I'm from Harlem, so I'm from the surrounding neighborhood. And a big part of my work is working with the community, and I term Harlem as the beloved community. And in short, I work with school leaders to improve their practices in an effort to improve student achievement and also the life outcomes of the people in the beloved community. Most recently, I wrote a policy piece that appears in the Center for Policy Analysis and Research in their journal. And I looked at the impact of zero tolerance school discipline policies on Black girls. And that was important to me because in our beloved community, I find that Black girls are disproportionately represented in school discipline referrals and suspensions. And I wanted to look at the policies and see how those policies may somehow affect Black girls in a negative way. So I looked at those policies, looked at the data, and looked at the outcomes and see if those intentions of the policies were indeed unintentional or based on deficit paradigms that school leaders and teachers use to unfairly punish Black girls, keeping them out of the school and most importantly, out of the school community.
Can you talk about what are you finding with some of that work? I know you presented last year at AERA. It's not last year in the spring, but what are some of the things that you're coming up with?
Well, I find that the teaching force is overwhelmingly white, and white women in particular, and there's a cultural mismatch, if you will, between teachers and students. And so many of the offenses that Black girls are being charged with are things that are culturally relevant. Like, let's say if you ask someone to do something and they say no, you know, a suspension or even a referral can be given for the Black girl being defiant, when in actuality, maybe what she was asked to do, she found to be not in alignment with who she is. And so maybe, or they found her to be talking loud and she was simply excited, and because of the way she looks and maybe the tone of her voice, that was seen as problematic, when she was just excited and you see your friends and you know you're a little rambunctious. That's part of being young. And so I found that many of the policies or even practices that were used to discipline Black girls did not celebrate them. They were punitively implied. And so in that light, whatever they did was deemed negative because those paradigms were already in place. And so they were simply, doing what you expected them to, talking loud with their friends, not moving in a manner that you thought was quote unquote, in a timely manner when they were maybe saying goodbyes, or it wasn't, at the moment you said so, like whatever you wanted, they didn't immediately stop what they were doing and comply when they could have been wrapping it up. So most times it's just a cultural mismatch between the teacher and the student. And that's problematic. And it's getting teachers to understand who the Black girls are and what it is they need and how they can celebrate them, as opposed to, punish them in ways that demean them and demoralize them.
A lot of your work clearly is involved with community engagement, historically marginalized, currently marginalized groups. But so from your experience as an educational leadership scholar and a practitioner, can you share with us and viewers your insights regarding what community engagement entails from the standpoint of educational leadership scholars and also practitioners?
So as a scholar, community engagement is simply ways in which the school functions, both internally with the stakeholders and externally. It's where it's situated, in the city or state or the particular locale, and how that school anchors itself in that community, and how as we as scholars can want to study what's happening that's conducive to the things that we think are important, most importantly student learning, but also creating a safe haven for all members of the community. So that space is accessed not just school hours per se, but maybe for community-based events, as polling places, meetings for nonprofits. The community is simply a resource. The school rather is a resource that the community knows is there and engages with it in a way that it affirms them. It produces outcomes that is beneficial to the respective community. So it could be, holding evening classes or holding town hall meetings or community forums or public lectures, but the school is used as an asset in the community. It's a place where they can come together and talk about issues that are relevant to them. You said, I'm sorry, one was a scholar, then as a practitioner, as a school leader?
Yeah.
I think in many ways, that's problematic. I think that oftentimes school leaders, when they define community engagement, they just think about parent involvement. And while parents are definitely a key part of the community, there are other members in that community that also have a stake in the outcomes of student learning. So it's important that we get everyone involved, from business owners to local shops and other nonprofits that may be in the area. So I think school leaders have to kind of shift the paradigm, or even reimagine just what does community engagement look like. And it's not just the parents or even the people who know the children. It's anyone who has a stake. It's anyone in the surrounding area that passes that building and would like to become involved, or even are invited in, and they are involved and committed to student learning, but also ways that the community can grow and become more of a family, the beloved community. So things that happens in the school site affects them all. And when I say affects, it's with an E, because of course student learning matters, but also their sense of belonging and self. So we form the beloved community. So I think that school leaders must look at community engagement as an opportunity to work with all stakeholders in ways that benefit children, to benefit student learning, of course, but also in ways that enhances everyone's life. I think that's important.
Okay, so kind of going along with that, what capacities should educational leadership scholars and practitioners obtain before attempting to engage in work with school communities? And we kind of talked about practitioners, but for scholars, like what would come first?
I think scholars should ask themselves why. Like, what is it they hope to gain from this experience? And that why should be from an asset perspective. Like, I think oftentimes when we come into, when scholars come into communities of color, they see them as broken and they want to put their capes on it and fix the community. And instead of looking at it from that deficit lens and being a savior of sorts, they should ask themselves what's happening. So I think the first capacity they should build is the ability to kind of unlearn what they think they know about the community. So you need to go in with a fresh pair of eyes and just kind of get to know the people, the culture, the language, what they do, like the occupations, the families, going to churches or synagogues, find ways to kind of immerse themselves just in who the community is and how it functions. From there, they can see what they can do to help the community. Case in point, I was working at a high school, and one of the things I did, I wanted to find a way to not only help students, but help the parents and the people in the community. So I simply asked the parents, you know, here's who I am. You know, my name is Terri Watson. I'm at the City College of New York. I have vast resources at my end that I can use to help you, but I need to know specifically how I can be of service. And that's a big part of leadership, is knowing how to serve or ways that we can use our resources that benefit, you know, all. And so one of the things I did, I asked parents again, what it is they needed or wanted. And for many of them, they needed help in navigating the immigration system. Like they wanted to know things about green cards and visas, and can their child, you know, go to college without being a US citizen. So then I got them, I connected them to our resource center on campus that deals with undocumented students and immigration. They actually have an immigration attorney. So when I did have a community meeting, I invited the attorney there, and she came in with, you know, not only informational flyers, but gave them numbers to call and, you know, told them the do's and don'ts, like here's what you're, you know, what you should know in the documents that you should have, and here's maybe what you may not want to do. So just things, she gave them tools they could use to help them and make better decisions for the, you know, their next steps. So, you know, is it getting a lawyer? Is it applying for a citizenship? Does DACA still apply? And if so, and how, and when does it expire? So it's getting, I use the resource at the college to turn key information to the parents so they can know what their resources are, what their rights are, and what we as school leaders in schools are obligated to provide for their children. Because oftentimes they don't know the services that they're entitled to. So I wanted them to know in a really clear and real way just what their rights are, what they should have, and what they aren't, you know, shouldn't have. Like they don't have to prove an address, so to speak. They don't have to have a physical green card. Like there's certain things that they're privy to that many of them simply didn't know. And so it was just getting them informed and connecting them to people who can help them. Because as school leaders, you know, we know that school leaders can't do it all, but our job in many ways is simply a conduit to information. So we're pointing children and families in the right directions to get the services they need to be successful. And so a big part, I think, of what we as researchers fall down on is that we want to fix communities instead of wanting, you know, where can we be of help? You know, where can we lend our talents to? And more importantly, what can we learn with the community? Like, what do they know? What assets do they have that we haven't tapped into? What's the wealth in that community? Because, you know, everyone matters and everyone has skills and talents that can be shared for the benefit of the whole. So we have to become willing participants in the community. We're not just sitting, you know, on the side taking notes and watching, you know, what happens, but we're talking and engaging in ways that our scholarship is useful. Because to know these things and to keep it to ourselves, then we're hoarding knowledge that could, you know, be better used if people simply knew what was available. And we can do that by speaking in clear language, using clear terms, giving them real help in real time. So we have to be practical in the work that we do and figure out what is it, you know, we can do to help, you know, everyone, not just the students, but also the parents, the people in the neighborhood shops, whoever is interacting in that community. We have to find ways to be of service and just asking, you know, just forming relationships, asking what it is, you know, you need or how can I be of service.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day, Dr. Christina Hespel, and she was talking about how the people in the field are experts, are not the people who work, you know, not the practitioner or the researchers, but the people, you know, in the communities are really the experts in trying to leverage, you know, not their knowledge to use it, but to better improve practices and life outcomes. And you kind of talk a little bit about that, I think sometimes when we go into academia, or we feel as though we are the experts, but at the end of the day, we're always kind of taking knowledge from others, and how we can be conscious of that, and respectful of communities. We're trying to engage with them.
I agree. I think, and that's part of the unlearning that we have to do. And that's, putting those acronyms aside, the PhDs and the EDDs, and just sitting down as a mother, as a wife, as a member of a community, and finding real and meaningful ways to share knowledge. I think what we have to do as practitioners is find ways to co-construct meaningful outcomes, meaning the onus isn't on us only. Meaning it's a relationship, it's give and take, there's some reciprocity in this. So as much as we're giving, we're also taking it, and we're sharing knowledge. And part of that is asking people, what is it that you can add to it or bring to it, or even watching what they do and how they do it, and then even letting them turnkey it, because there's certain things that they are privy to because they're part of that community that you may not know. So it's just finding the talent amongst, the community, and finding ways to give them a platform, to give them the tools they need to turnkey what it is they know and the best practices they've learned, because they're doing this work in a real way, and this work is their livelihood, is their life. And if they can kind of tell other folks how they make it happen, I think that's far more valuable than me coming in as Dr. Watson and here are these bright ideas that I found based on my work. I can use their very lived experiences as a tool to improve the lives of others. And that's just making the connections between the communities so that they can share resources and just get a dialogue going. So it's not a one-way street, so to speak. It's a community. It's almost a synergy that exists. And our job is simply to be of assistance. And if it's providing, childcare, or providing a place, on our campus, maybe if the school is not available, helping them find a place, or making sure that there's, let's say, dinner. If we're gonna have a dinner, maybe sponsoring that. So it's doing things that, using our resources to add or to complement the good work that's already happening in communities. I think oftentimes we don't see the good in the community. We don't think that they're doing things on their own that's valuable. We simply come in with, here's how you do it, instead of looking at what's being done and just complimenting that. And I think that's part of that asset perspective that we have to really, really practice, seeing what great work is happening here and who's doing it, and ask them, how can I help you grow the work? How can I add my talents so that we can reach even more people?
I guess all of that, and hearing and listening to you speak, you have a very, I really appreciate your perspective on it, because it's not a theory based, it's a people based.
Right.
Right. But it sounds like to me too, it's like a very much of a systemic issue in terms of like the preparation of perhaps practitioners and scholars, and maybe how their preparation contributed, because some people come from perhaps privileged backgrounds or didn't have experience with dealing with adversity or community engagement, and so like how is your practice and perspective, where does that come from? And talk a little bit about that.
I guess I'm uniquely positioned because I live and work in my community. So I see the children in the school, I see them in the grocery store, I see them at community events, I see them in the park. They've stopped me on the street and said, hey, Dr. Watson, so, and that's part of it. Like, I'm not just an outsider. And so I think that's part of the why. Even when we decide to be teachers, what it is, what do we want to do? And more importantly, where do we want to do it? Because I think place matters. And if you're going to be at a school site, then you have to be meaningfully engaged with the school community and the parents. And I think a big part of that, particularly if you're not from that culture, is getting to know the community. So it's doing community walks, it's participating in community-based events. It's simply ask students, what are you doing on the weekends, and sharing who you are and learning who they are, and forming this relationship. I think that's key. And I think that's just part of, good teaching. Cornel West once said, you can't lead the people if you don't love the people. And this kind of radical love is this love that's going to, it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to say you don't know. It's okay to say, you know, I'd like to learn, or can you show me? It's learning another language, it's trying different foods, it's taking part in community events, is being an advocate for that community with that community. So you're not coming in and saving them, so to speak, but you're simply listening and taking good notes and complimenting the good work they already do. So I think what's helped me is that I do my work in Harlem, and I'm from Harlem. So that beloved community, I truly love the people. In fact, I am the people. So when I do this work, I think, like, you know, it's my mama and them I'm talking to. So I'm going to sit down and listen. I'm going to take notes, and, you know, I'm going to speak when spoken to and find ways to build on what they've said. So I'm not coming in with the answers. I'm just lending a voice or lending an ear and offering a different perspective and maybe another tool that they can already add to their tool set. But I in no way see it as I'm saving the community. I'm simply engaging in a meaningful and loving way with the community. I care about students, and I care about the families, and I care about the beloved community. I'm a part of the community. And I think for those outside of the community, you have to find ways to belong, to get to know the community, to ask questions, to listen, to share, you have to be willing to unlearn those preconceived notions of what you thought these people were, or that families don't care, and even how you define a family, what does it look like? You know, so we have to kind of unpack our own biases and be willing to just be wrong sometimes, and to humble yourself and to learn with the community and ask, you know, what can I do, or what is it you need, or and then ask them what you need. Maybe it's language lessons, maybe you need to travel more, maybe you need to read some books that you can become aware of the realities that your students and families face. Because I think, you know, knowledge is power, but I think ignorance is dangerous, you know, so we have to kind of challenge our own ignorance, if you will, things that we don't know, and be willing to, again, unlearn, unpack, and then be better informed as practitioners, as school leaders, and just as people who care about people. I think that's important.
Here we go. Ms. Kanisha has something. Maybe to follow up with that question, that second question. We can go maybe to the next one.
Okay.
I think so. So the institution of education, educational leadership research, have been described in many times as like contested terrain, with many competing positions. So from your perspective, expertise, and experiences, what are some of the institutional, societal, and cultural challenges, so historically and currently, that impede educational leadership scholars or practitioners from positively engaging communities?
I think, let's start with institutional. Have you ever completed an IRB form? You know, the antiquated protocols and processes. Yeah, I do think we have to, you know, we have to have guidelines and standards, and we have to have, you know, informed consent and assent at the time of interviews. But I think we have to find ways to make it easier for researchers and to move through it, because oftentimes, you know, it takes IRB sometimes an inordinate amount of time, and you need not just IRB approval. I'm sorry, IRB is an acronym for the Internal Review Board. So it's these systems in place to make sure that we are doing what we say we should. And that happens at the school level, meaning our university, but also at the district level. So you complete one set of forms at the institution that you work in, and then another at the school district. And it'd be really awesome if they would talk to one another to understand, you know, what it is that we as researchers should have, the kind of consent and assent forms we need so that they're streamlined. Oftentimes, you're doing two sets of forms for two different institutions, you know, the school site where you're at, and then where you want to do your research. So it'd be kind of awesome if they talked to one another and had a set of protocols that we adhere to. And of course, it would be, you know, varied by age. You know, it should be different, obviously, for younger children and for older children, because at 18, you can't assent without your parents' permission. So I think we do need systems in place, but we have to streamline so that there's not you're not overrun with paperwork. So I'd say that at an institutional level. At a societal level, I think we have to really look at what is community engagement? And oftentimes the onus is on the school leader and the researcher. And I wish there were more district mandates and even college-wide initiatives that encourage researchers to find ways to engage with the outside community to form this beloved community. So, and that would just mean that, you know, there should be people on both ends with the goal of, you know, how do we form community with, you know, K-12 schools and vice versa. Folks at the university should want to, you know, reach out to K-12 schools because, you know, we're working with student teachers, we're doing research. We are hoping that the students in this K-12 setting will matriculate to our colleges and universities. So if we can form those relationships a little earlier on to make it a cohesive K-20 system, I think that would be really awesome. So we have to find, when I say we, I mean at the university level and at the K-12 level, we have to kind of come together and make sure that our systems are aligned and we're not, you know, duplicating our efforts, because that makes it, you know, arduous on the part of the researcher and the school leader. And having someone in there to kind of guide the practice, or even having public lectures or workshops where we not only gather research, but you're required to share out with the community so that we're a part of that community, sharing what we've learned, what it is they'd like to know more about that we can kind of add to the research. So our research is informed by the community. So we're doing research with the community in many ways. It's like action research. We're going in, you know, together, looking at ways that we can improve our practices at a community level, K-12, and also, you know, 16 through 20 at the college level. But I think it has to be more of a conversation. And lastly, you said, I'm sorry, you said the institution, society, was there a third?
Culturally, or any other ways as well that you can think of too.
Yeah, I think culturally, we have to, you know, oftentimes when one thinks of a researcher, I wonder if they're thinking of me. Like, you know, do they see the people as being part of the research process, that we're not just a researched? So we have to even reframe what a researcher is. I think students can be researchers. I think teachers can be researchers. School leaders can be researchers. I think that we have to really challenge these paradigms of just, you know, what is research? Research is simply, you know, a study, and we can study ourselves. We can reflect on it. We can do student-led research. So I think it's kind of even unpacking what research looks like, and particularly what a researcher is. And that way we give students and communities their own agency. They can study their own practices, and we can maybe lend our expertise, but they can be in the driver's seat and study themselves and ways to improve what's happening in their community. Because as you said earlier, those community members are the experts. And as institutions of higher learning, we should just be a resource that the community can use to solve the challenges that they face, because they know most what affects them. And because they are living with it, you know, they have more skin in the game. You know, oftentimes we do the work, but then we go home, you know, whereas, you know, they're still there. And so, you know, and that's where the follow-up is. That's where the funding comes from. So we're doing research, but research for what? And research for who? And I think we have to reshape, you know, the who part even. It's not just for a, you know, a peer-reviewed publication. Part of it is just of service. You know, I think we have to stop putting so much onus on peer-reviewed publications. Do matter, but I think service is so much important, and research is a function of service, I think. And if we can find ways to turnkey the research in ways that helps the community, I think that should count. And it doesn't always have to end in a peer-reviewed publication. It could be a public lecture. It can be a community food drive. It could be a voting initiative. Like, I think we have to reimagine what we value in the academy. Oftentimes, you know, we want, you know, publications, we want funding, we want strong teaching evaluations, but we don't actually charge us as researchers just to go out and do good work, and knowing that that good work may not always end in you getting a NSF grant. I mean, that would be nice, but sometimes it's just you working with families to improve eating habits, or working with families to improve student attendance. There are things that, you know, there's no tangible outcomes on our end, like things that we have skin in, but we should still be invested in the outcomes of student lives. And if we can improve it in any way, I think that should count for something. But oftentimes, we're so hell-bent on, getting it published. Is it, like, what are the outcomes that we can use for our benefit? Because we know, if you don't have it, year 1, 2, and 3, that contract isn't renewed, that tenure track, isn't going to stay with you. And then, you're back on the job market. So I think we have to stop prioritizing things that don't speak life to community. And part of that is the, publications, the things we look for. Service should be, I think, a quantifiable part of the work that we do. We should be giving of our talent, especially if we're co-constructing, the beloved community. I think that has to count more. Service should count more.
So what does that balance look like for folks who are trying to, on the tenure track, who are trying to get there and they don't feel like they can truly do the work that they want to do because they're, on this time clock of trying to get peer review articles? Like, how do you navigate both of those spaces?
I know I've spent the past 5 years making sure that my scholarship and service were one and the same. And so, meaning I wasn't just doing the research, but my research belonged to the community. So I was co-constructing it with the community. I alluded earlier to working with parents and asking them what it is they needed to improve their life outcomes. And so that was actually at One Article of the Year. I wrote an article called Reframing Parent Involvement, where I talked about, me talking to parents, asking them what it is they wanted, and then getting them what they asked for. And that became an article. And for that, we looked at community cultural wealth. And it was a perfect marriage, but it blended, again, my scholarship, but also the service. So we have to find a way to align our research to the work. And I think if we're meaningfully a part of the community, like we're not separate, like if we're engaged and we're asking questions and listening more than anything, then that's a viable study. And a lot of the study, and again, it could be action research. You can bring on students, participatory action research. Like, it's just different ways to frame it. Oftentimes, it's not just, like you do the study, massage the data, get the narratives out, but you're not looking for the study. Like, I think the final outcome, the publication, should come secondary to the good work you want to do. Like, when I help the parents or, got them some tools, I wanted to help more than anything. Like, the help trumped the publication. So the publication came later, but I was able to get the narrative, that qualitative part, those thick, rich data that we say that we have to look for. Well, that was just, me talking and having real conversations and then listening carefully and then gleaning what it is, they wanted and then providing them with it. And that became the article. And it was everything from filling out FAFSA forms to healthier living to working high blood pressure. Like, they had some real issues that they wanted to know, who do I know at the college who can help them with their diabetes? So, so it was going to our medical school then and getting those faculty to come in and hold public lectures where they talked about healthy eating and cooking tips and community gardens and just things that was already happening, but maybe it was just connecting dots in that community so that the community members knew where the resources were in the respective community. So it was just really helping the community kind of synergize. And that was my role. I was far more of a conduit. Like, I didn't have the answers. I was just bringing everyone together.
Thinking about that, and trying to, again, so being able to integrate, your research with your community engagement, I feel like that can bring on, and we've heard this about, with faculty of color, and other marginalized people have marginalized identities, that additional stressors, right? Not even so additional workloads, asking to be, serve on committees, asking to be involved in different groups and be representative, and kind of that additional toll or labor that comes with the academy, but also then the community as well. And maybe can you talk a little bit about like managing that and how that fits with your work and with your experiences?
Yeah, you know, we all do committee work. It's part of it. I think is learning how to protect our time, being clear with our department chairs and deans, like, you know, here's what I'm doing, and more importantly, here are the things that I need. So, you know, not no, but maybe at another time. And instead of telling them what you can't do, I always say, here's what I'm doing, and I'm hoping that what I'm doing can align to that committee that you're going to put me on. So it's finding ways to, yes, my scholarship and service were aligned. I'm sorry, my scholarship and my service to the community was in line, but you have to also do service to the respective university. And so finding ways that can also kind of triage it, and that speaks to me as well. So I would advise young scholars to, when you sign up for committee work, find something that you're interested in, that you care deeply about. I know that when I chose my committee, I'm on the course and standings committee, you know, and that was important because I wanted to know, you know, from a student perspective, you're like, are we being transparent, meaning we as faculty, and if students do have a problem with a faculty member or they're contesting a grade, where did the communication break down between the faculty and the student that we now have this problem? So when I got on that particular committee, I wanted to know what were the challenges that students were facing, so that when I'm making my course syllabus, that I know that I should have very firm deadlines, that I should put some guidelines in, like instead of saying I won't accept late papers, maybe allowing a grace window, like just looking for best practices. So I served on that committee because I wanted to learn how I can improve my own practice as a faculty member. So by serving on the course and standings committee, I got an idea of the challenges that students were facing with my colleagues, so that it kind of told me, you know, like, here's what I should do, you know, give out the course syllabus the very first day, go over it with students, you know, verbatim, read it, you know, line by line, so they understand there's an attendance policy, the structure of papers, late papers, extra credit, anything that, you know, would impede their successful completion of the course. I wanted to know what it was. So that committee worked for me. So I think depending on where you are in your career, you should find committee work that, you know, adds to you, that you're not sitting in a, you know, in a conversation that you don't want to be a part of. Because that makes it hard for everyone, because, you know, you don't want to be there. The folks running the meeting probably know that you don't want to be there, and it just makes it longer. But we have to do service work, so find service that speak to us, things that we want to know to improve our practice within the university proper. So that's what I would tell young faculty.
And this is kind of backtracking a little bit, but how important is it that scholars are connected to the communities that they're doing service in? And I know you kind of talked about they have to find ways to listen and to be there, even if they're not there, but how much does that matter, or does it not matter? Because I've seen studies where people are like, oh, well, this community needs this. And like you were saying, they go in with this idea of like, this community is being underserved, so we're going to go here and do, you know, find.
I think we lost Kanisha. I'm going to try to answer her question. I think what she was getting at was how can we shift our own deficit thinking around communities so that the work is meaningful for us. So I think for that is that that's part of our why. Like when we choose to do community engagement, right? And it's not something we do, it's something that it has to be a feeling, like it's something that, you know, it's a deep desire and you're interested, or you have a great respect for this culture and people. You'd like to know more about them, and you'd like to use the tools that you have to be of service. So you're not saving them, you're simply lending your talents, and you're willing to learn some things. So it has to be a reciprocity. So we have to shift this idea of you coming in with your research to save them. I think the first thing we should do is look at the community. And when I say look at, I mean take real time to sit and talk with people, go to coffee shops, sit on community board meetings, tour local schools to figure out, you know, where do you want to work? And most importantly, where would your talents be most, you know, beneficial to? Like, are you interested? I know for me, I wanted to go to a high school because I taught high school. I helped create a high school some years ago. So I was comfortable with older children and working with teachers and school leaders at that, you know, 9 through 12 level. So I knew that I wanted to work in a high school. I knew I wanted to work in a high school of color, and in Harlem in particular, because I wanted to be there. So I think a big part of community engaged work is that you should want to be engaged with that community, and you should want to in a real way. It should complement you. I think doing this work makes me a better teacher. It makes me a better mother. It makes me a better friend because I'm meaningfully aware of the community. I don't know them, you know, well, quote unquote, but I have a good idea of who they are. I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to unlearn my own, you know, what I think I know, to say that maybe I was wrong, or maybe, you know, I read these studies, or, you know, I've seen some things and maybe that's not who we are now, knowing that communities are constantly changing and evolving, gentrifying, and just, you know, in the here and now, there are some things that I need to know. And then more importantly, how can I take what I know to add to the community? Because I want to be a fit. Hi, Kanisha.
Hi, I'm back. I don't know what part of the question you got caught up on, but did you get most of it?
Yeah, I just spoke about the need to shift that deficit paradigm and to want to, like, I chose to work in Harlem because I love Harlem. I'm from the community. I know the people. I am the people. And so coming back home to the people was beautiful on many fronts. And I think for those outside of the community, when you choose to work in a community, ask yourself why. And it should be things from an asset perspective. Like, you respect the culture, you enjoy the facets of that community. You believe in them and what's happening, and you see where your talents can be of use. So it's simply you're complementing it, but it's not this, you know, you're marginalized and here, let me help you, and here are the answers, because, you know, you can't save anything. You know, right? We can only give, you know, tools, be an asset, a resource, but ultimately it's the community. So our work must be community-led, community-driven, community-informed, and it should go back to the community. So even when I do this work, I always report my findings. I always share my papers. I've invited, at the last AERA meeting, I invited my school community to come to AERA to tell them who they are. Because sure, you read the paper, but here is the community, and you know, these are the parents, these are the students, here is the school leader, so that it's not just my work. This work belongs to all of us, and I'm simply a student, and my job is maybe to be a scribe of sorts, you know, to get it out there. And how can we turnkey what we learn in our community to help other school leaders and families and children who are facing similar challenges? So I think our work then is far more impactful. So it's not just about my community, but it's about all communities who face similar challenges, and how can the work that we're doing be of service.
Well, I got a question on the chat for the video on our YouTube channel. And it's from Zach Day, and they asked, and I think it really goes into kind of what we were just talking about, what strategies can you utilize to help you unthink what you think you know about community?
I think it's going on neighborhood walks. You know, like literally getting out of your car one Saturday or Sunday, just getting out and walking the community, talking to people, you know, telling them who you are, and you know, you love to work in this community, telling them who you are and why this matters to you. I think we have to be transparent. I think we have to know that in the end, you know, I truly believe that people are good and they have goodwill. And I think if we practice that, and if we look for that, if we look for the good, if we look for the bright side, if we're optimistic, I think we'll get that back in tenfold. I think part of that is shifting, again, the paradigms and unlearning things like, oh, it's bad there, well, what makes it bad? You know, and you know, it's going to coffee shops, going to neighborhood events, just getting to know the community. And you know, leaving those fears behind. Yes, you be aware of your surroundings, of course, but that's anywhere you go. But I think part of it is just being open and being real about your biases. You know, it's reading more, it's traveling, it's really pushing back on what we think we know, and not being afraid to be wrong.
That's one of the last excerpt Dr. Mark Gooden, he spoke about, you know, the personal autobiography or cultural autobiography. One of the classes I teach, we do is a cultural bubble project where you even step out of your, you know, your predominant culture and try to experience life on the other side and kind of, like you said, unpack biases and prejudices and things like that. But I always come back to like it kind of also at the university level and it being kind of back to the systems and how perhaps I guess some universities are probably more socially just or, you know, anti-oppressive than others. And so kind of what is your perspective on that systems approach then if we're training that goes into researchers, but also principals, because we know these principals aren't coming, they've gone through a training program, they've done something, but still we have in many communities and we still have a lot of you know, unjust outcomes in schools.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what can school preparation programs for both researchers and practitioners maybe better do?
I think we have to find ways to help our students become part of the community. So one of the things I do is that, you know, I assign community walks. You know, I give sometimes oral projects where you have to go and meet X amount of members of the community and come back and tell me not only what you know, but what did you think you know that you now know you don't know? Like, what did you unlearn, in short? So it's really finding ways to engage young people in the respective communities. So oftentimes it's going to the school site where they're doing the student teaching and just walk in a 10-block radius around the school community, talking to people, taking pictures, telling the story of that community, going, doing the research on that community to understand the history of the people and kind of where they're coming from and why their realities are as such, understanding the systemic nature of race and racism and how, and many times that's impeded progress in urban communities, and knowing kind of the history of that. And then taking what you know, so what can you do now that you're not going to, keep recreating these oppressive systems? Because oftentimes we and our problems are the same. So if we're really to attack systemic racism, then we have to start with ourselves and unlearning our own race-based practices, and to say that you're not racist, and that's that ancient proverb we joke about. We all have biases. It's owning that, and then working every day to challenge that and to do the good work that we know we can. Because again, I think that we're all good people, and we just need tools and ways to move our own mindsets so that we're seeing the good in people, that we're coming in from an asset perspective as opposed to a fear or a deficit lens that we use to further marginalize already marginalized communities.
How might, and this is I think kind of going back to, but how might school leaders
I think we lost Kanisha again, Brandon.
I know we did. It's been right at the time of the question comes up. It'll pop back up. I think we have about 10 minutes left. So and we want to be respectful of your time. So in thinking about the current, perhaps the social political context, the current context of our nation and the world, and what advice do you have for educational leadership researchers or even people who are current practitioners who want to or who aspire to integrate community engagement in their scholarly agenda or their work?
I think the first thing one should do is to don't go at it alone. I think that community engagement shouldn't be a one and done. Like, it's not just you're going to do this particular project or you have this grant and this 4-week window. I think that meaningful community engagement is long-standing and it becomes part of the community. So I think we have to think of a long-term vision, like, and the end goal won't be in a year or two, but it'll be, in years to come, but we have to start somewhere. And so I think part of that is coming at it, not so you won't be overwhelmed. So maybe getting together with, your own colleagues at your school site and seeing what talents you possess and then how you can lend that to the community. And then as a team going out and doing this work, I think we don't often use our own synergy at universities. We as researchers work in silos, and we don't, allow other perspectives or other paradigms to come in because we're so, tunnel vision. We're looking at, tenure, we're looking at publications, but we don't know that we could do those things in community as well. So before we go out into the community, let's do some reflection on our own and see how we function as a community. And then as a collective, what we can do. Like, I think it was the African saying, if you want to go, fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. So I think part of that is just coming together as a school, as an institution, and seeing, what are our talents? What do we have that we can lend to the community? And then what are the avenues that we can kind of use to do this work? Because community engagement is not just, a researcher in a school site. It should be, school to school. I mean, and that's the community, because I'm not just, Terri. I'm Terri Watson from the City College of New York. So when I come in, I know who my community is. I know the resources that we have that we can lend. And then I come in and I'm willing to bring colleagues in, because that's where the lift is going to come. It's not, if it's just me, it's simply impossible. I'm only one person, but we have a big faculty where we're deeply rooted in the community, and I know that they care. And so collectively, we can do far more. So in answer to your question, I think one of the first things that one should do if they want to do community engaged work is to see who else in your respective school community would like to do this kind of work. And then how can you, as a team, go out and be effective? When I say effective, yes, you're going to get those quantifiable outcomes, but also effective with an A. You're going to be part of forming this beloved community. Kanisha, I see you're back.
I'm back. I know. It's like every time I ask a question, it's like right there. Well, we have a couple minutes, so hopefully it'll stay on. But I was just going to ask, how might school leaders and practitioners go about?
I think I answered her question. Unfortunately, she cut off again. Yeah. But again,
I have it here too, so I think she was asking about how might school leaders and practitioners go about building and maintaining those relationships with community stakeholders, the building, but also the maintaining.
I think that maintaining part comes from our why, that initial, curiosity, that initial feelings that when we first, like, here's why we're here. We're at the school community because, like, for me, coming back to Harlem, being from the community, going to City College was just, a trifecta. And so we have to, I think, as researchers and as scholars, find our own trifecta. Where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself complementing the community? And it doesn't have to be your community, but, do you feel at home here? Because if you're not comfortable, then you'll never, not only will you not be a part of the community, but the community will know that you are not a part of the community. So it won't work. So it really has to be this deep and abiding feeling that you have for the community. Brandon was reading your question, and I was saying that in finding a community to work with, you have to really understand your why. And your why should be deeply entrenched as to who you are as a person. And you're taking part in this community, speaks to you. It completes you. You care. You want to belong. You want to know more and learn more and unlearn some things that that don't lend itself to best practices. So I think in working with the community, particularly in long-term relationships, we have to have a love affair with the community. We have to love the people. We have to love the children. We have to love the culture. And part of that is just sitting and forming relationships and really understanding who that community is. And then, you know, how you can be of service, and even in, you know, as easy as asking them and attending events and showing up, taking part in the events. So you're no longer the outsider, you're simply the newer member of the community. And if we can do that, if we can kind of bridge the link between the, I guess, internal and external community, particularly for us as researchers, because we are this external part, but we have to, you know, just kind of immerse ourselves and really take the time to get to know the community, to show up for things, even things that aren't part of our agenda. You know, so, you know, I'm going to basketball games. I'm going to, you know, plays. I'm showing up at school-wide events. Why? Because I care about the community. I'm excited about the kids. I've seen them working all semester long. I see their projects. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to the gallery walks with their parents. You know, I'm making sure that, let's say if they need something, that if I have it in terms of, you know, grant funding, or I have colleagues who can lend themselves to that, then I'm going to make sure that, you know, I connect those dots so that, you know, I'm meeting their needs. Maybe they, you know, if it's a student teacher they need, or they'd like some best practices in terms of healthy eating, I'm going to connect them to our, you know, medical school and the folks on staff there who can come in and give a talk that is going to help that community. So it's just finding ways to help the community just grow and be better. And I, you know, I want to be a part of it. So it's not like me helping the community, it's me helping my community. So it's not just a school, it's my school, and they're my children. And the work that we do is our work. It's not just my work, it's our work, because I want you to care, because it's about us and what we do together. It's that relationship, I think, that will help us to last, you know, long term, instead of, you know, once the paper is done or the grant ends. But, you know, I've been at my school site for, you know, for 5 years, and, you know, it's a relationship. You know, it has ups and downs, and you listen, you take and you give, and you learn and you grow. And that's what research has to be. It's not just a study, but I think it's a lived experience that we have to nurture with those in our community. I think that's the onus that we have as researchers. That's the charge. That's the beautiful part of what we do, that we can, you know, we can make our own family. And I think that's awesome.
I think the work you're doing is very, I think, inspiring for especially for students like myself and Kanisha, because we're always come up with these questions like, how can we do this? You know, when we go out and become researchers ourselves. I know for viewers, and so we really just appreciate you taking the time to share your perspectives, your insights, your experiences, sharing that knowledge with us. I think means the world, because this is stuff that we can't get from reading an article, you know, and so it's really kind of gives us that personal touch. And so we really, really appreciate you, and we appreciate your time and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Brandon. I look forward to seeing both you and Kanisha at UCEA's annual meeting in Houston, Texas, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I'll see you in a few weeks, guys. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
For everyone else, all the viewers, be sure to tune in for the next AERA Division A Graduate Student Committee Connect series, which is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, November 28th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you all, and have a good night.